welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Friday, June the 17th, 2016, and it's been a very long time since our next guest, former co-host, has been on the show, and I first met this gentleman through SGT Report. He was contributing a lot of original material at SGT Report. I love his work. You know him, you love him, Mr. Mark S. Mann. Mark, how you doing today?
Hey, Rory. Good to talk to you again.
I am so glad that you're here, and I'm really grateful that you reached out to me by phone a few days ago to tell me what had happened to you, and then you, in subsequent follow-up phone calls, explained the whole story, and that's what we're going to get into. Mark had a situation that's happened to him that Jim Sinclair brought to our attention probably a year and a half or 2 years ago when he released an article called GOTS, G-O-T-S, Get Out of the System. And Gerald Celente had a similar situation, had a similar experience as Mark, but Mark's situation sheds a different light on the whole thing. And that's what we wanted to talk about. And Mark, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and share with these kind folks what's happened the last few days.
Okay. Well, I want to mention that the reason why I'm kind of coming back to the surface is because I think what we're going to talk about is really important. And I've been involved with the alternative media for a few years, and mentioned a lot of know a lot of the people by face, and have met with a lot of people that you mentioned, Sean, Celente, yourself, and I think what's really important is people hear what happened. And so I've had a lot of restructuring in my life the last 2 years, and I was always in a situation where when I was saving money, cash, I was always pulling it out of the bank in small increments off of a weekly paycheck or stuff like that. And this week, something really interesting happened to me that I want to share with everybody. And that is, I had a lot of trouble withdrawing money out of a credit union account that I have. And I no longer live in the People's Republic of Connecticut. I finally escaped. And about a year ago, I moved out to the Midwest. I still work in the firearms industry, and I'm a W-2 employee, so I get a payroll deposit every other week into the same bank account that I've had open for about 14 months. And what happened was I got my last payroll on June 3rd, and I had gotten an annual bonus from my employer. And after taxes, it was about just under 20,000. It was about 19,000 and change. And I had moved some money around and paid some bills. And basically what happened was I had left for vacation 3 days before I got the deposit into my account. And I was out of the state. I was back on the East Coast for about 2 weeks. So I really, didn't have an opportunity to do any banking. I just kind of let the money sit in my account for about 10 days. And when I came back to the Midwest, I decided to go in to my local branch of this credit union, which has 6 locations. And I walked in there on Monday, and it's a smaller credit union. And I was talking to some of the tellers that I know there, and I said, "Hey, I've got this money in my account, and I'd like to transfer some of it over to my savings, and I'd like to withdraw some cash." And they said, "Okay, well, how much cash would you like?" And I said, "I'd like to withdraw about $11,000 in cash." And they promptly told me, well, they would not be able to honor that request. They were unable to do that. And of course, at that point, I said, "Why?" And I was waiting for them to say something about the amount and paperwork or something like that. And instead, they told me that they were not able to honor the request because they did not have that much cash at the branch.
And Mark, you chose a small regional or local credit union in order to avoid a larger either regional bank or one of the too big to fail banks or any of these other nightmare zombie banks, as we like to refer to them. So you chose this smaller credit union for that reason, right?
That's right. And
Okay.
over the years, Rory, that you and I have been in following the alternative media and listen to a lot of the so-called experts on banking and people that follow all this stuff, you know as well as I do that people have always said if you're gonna be in the system, it's best to do it with a smaller regional bank or credit union because they don't have the leverage that a lot of these zombie banks have, and their charters require them to do things differently. They don't have the derivatives exposure. They don't have the toxic assets. They don't have, the high risk investments in their portfolio. They have more cash on hand. They're not allowed to diversify into certain areas. So, all I could say after this experience is they're pretty much all the same at this point. Okay,
Right.
so they
So,
tell me that they can't fulfill the request, and I basically ask why. What is the issue? And they say, well, that's a lot of money. We don't have that much money at the branch. They say, well, according to whom is it a lot? I asked at this point I'm dealing with the branch manager, and I say, well, according to whom is that a lot of money? Is that your personal definition of a lot of money, or is that the IRS's definition, or the U.S. Treasury's, or the credit union itself? $11,000 is not a lot of money. And they basically said, well, if you want that kind of cash, what you need to do is you need to contact the main branch of the credit union, which is in the next town over, and you need to contact them and, quote, make a request for the money. And what will happen is once you do that, they can order the money. Again, they can order the money, and it could take up to a week to 2 weeks to get the money. And what will happen is when the money comes in, we will contact you, and either you can have the money picked up at the main branch, or we can have it delivered to this branch and you can pick it up here. We will call you when it's available. And I said, I cannot believe this. This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not waiting a week or two for my money. It's not a lot of money. Stop making it sound like I'm asking for an absorbent amount of money. And so I said, I realized that I was dealing with a robot at that point and that I wasn't going to get anywhere with this person. So the best thing for me to do was to leave that branch, which is the branch that I go to most often, and call the head branch and speak with the branch manager. So I did that. I got back to my office and I made a call. And after waiting a few minutes, I got this head branch manager and I said, hey, look, this is who I am. And I was just over at your other branch. And, I requested to withdraw this amount of money. And this is what I was told. And she said, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to wait a week to 2 weeks to get my money. I need it now. And if it's going to take a day or two, that's no problem. But I'm not going to wait this long. I've never seen such a thing. I can understand if I was asking for 50 or 60,000 in cash or something like that, but $11,000 is not a lot of money. And they said, well, yes, it is a lot of money. And I said, again, by whose definition? And they wouldn't tell me by whose definition. And I said, well, I don't understand. What is the policy? I would like you to explain to me the policy that if I need to make a cash withdrawal, this is what I have to deal with. And I said, you're basically telling me that the credit union, which probably has tens of millions of dollars on deposit, has to go through all of this nonsense to scrape up $11,000 in cash? And she said, yeah, that's the situation. And I said, well, how do you manage to operate on a daily basis if this is the way that things are? I'm the only person that's asking for cash. What if you had 20 people walk into the branch and they ask for $500 a piece. And she said, well, we can't discuss our cash reserves, which change by the day. And I said, I understand that, but you also have a vault at each branch. What do you have in there? Postage stamps? You know, you can't even come up with $11,000 in cash. And she started getting annoyed. And I said, well, I need you to define a clear path to my money. I need to know how long it's going to take. I can't wait here and have you tell me a week or two. And the more we started having these discussions, the more she started getting annoyed. And I said, she says, well, we have to order the money. And I said, order it from who? The printer? What do you mean you have to order the money? Please explain that. She said, well, we have a process that we have to follow for large cash withdrawals, and we don't have the money here. We have to order it. And I said, okay, again, this is going nowhere. And I said, well, what is the purpose of this policy? And she said to me, this policy is for your protection. Okay? This is for your protection. And I said, now I'm really annoyed. And I said, okay, well, then can you please explain to me how you're protecting me by giving me evasive answers and that create roadblocks and obstacles for me to get to my money? And that's when she really got angry and she said, sir, if you continue giving me this attitude, I'm going to hang up on you. And I said, oh, really? Can I quote you on that? And she said, she got angry again, and these were her exact words. I will tell you when you can get your money. And I said, really?
Wow.
Can I quote you on that too? And she said, I'm going to transfer you to so-and-so, who is the vice president of the bank. And I said, okay, great. I'd love to talk to him because obviously I'm not getting anywhere with you. So by that time, it was already about 4:45, and they transferred me over to this guy. And in the process, I got disconnected, of course. And I called back and told him who I was and said, this is who I want to speak to. And I got the guy's voicemail. And, by this time, it's a few minutes to 5. And, these people all check out at 5 o'clock. The term banker's hours is really, they don't call it banker's hours for nothing. But,
Exactly.
So what happened was I left a message and I basically said, hey, listen, this is who I am. I was just talking to so-and-so, and I spent about 15 or 20 seconds recapping what happened. And I said, I want my money, and if you don't call me by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, by 10:05, you're going to be getting a call from my attorney, and you can explain it to him. And I basically hung up, and the next morning, by 8:15, I got a call from this gentleman on my way to work. Basically said, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm returning your call. What can I do for you? And I said, well, do you know why I'm calling? And he says, yeah, I do. And I said, well, then you should know what I need. What's up? Why am I having to go through all of this to get my money? And he says, well, you're requesting a large sum of cash, and we don't have that available at the branch. And I said, again, by whose definition is this a large sum of cash? And he was being very evasive. And I said, I used to work in banking and finance. And the last time I checked, a checking account was what is referred to as a DDA, demand deposit account. Is that correct? Is it still a demand deposit account? And he said, yes, it is. And I said, well, in that case, I want you to understand something. I'm not requesting the money. Requests can be denied. I'm demanding that you give me the money. And I want it within a reasonable time period. I was told that I would have to wait a week to 2 weeks to get the cash, and that's not acceptable. He said, who told you that? And I said, your branch manager from the such and such branch and your branch manager from your head branch. He said, well, that's not correct. And I said, well, then why are they telling people that? I was told that by two people who are branch managers, not tellers, branch managers. He said, well, if you want that money, we can have it here for you in a couple of days. And I said, define a couple of days. He said, a couple of days. He repeated it himself. I said, you see, this is why people like me get aggravated with people like you, because I'm asking you very clear questions in English. I'm not being rude to you. I'm not raising my voice. I'm not using profanity. I'm being very professional, and you are being evasive and you are giving me a hard time. I'm asking you to be very specific, and you are not doing that. You are being very elusive and you are being very combative. And he said, well, I told you it'll take a few days. And I said, does that mean 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? I need to know. And he said, I'll tell you what. If you tell me the denominations that you want the money in, I will have it here for you tomorrow. Does that work for you? I said, yes. And he said, well, what denominations do you want? And I told him, and he said, well, that's more than $11,000. And I said, that's right. Now I want it all. And he said, so you're changing, right, right. So he said, so you're changing the amount from 11,000 to 16,000? I said, that's right. He says, well, why do you want to do that? I said, because obviously you don't have it. And if I have a chance to get it, I might as well get it all in one shot. And he said, well, that's not the case. And I said, okay, well, I've got another question for you. I'm going to have money in this account periodically. And if I decide that I want to retrieve some, I want to make sure that I don't have to go through the same nonsense I'm going through now. What is the amount that I could walk into a branch and feel comfortable with not having to go through that, know that I'm not going to have to go through all this nonsense and, make so you don't have to quote order the money? And he said, well, our cash reserves change every day. And, depending on the branch, a couple of $1,000. And I said, again, I'm asking you for specifics. He says, I can't give you an amount. And I said, so I'm asking you how much money I could go into a branch for and not have a problem, and you won't give me an answer? And he said, okay, 2,500.
He
I
just
said,
made up a
okay.
number.
Right. Well, he said 2,500. And I said, well, what does that number mean? And he said, well, we consider anything in excess of 2,500 to be a large cash withdrawal.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, is that your definition, the IRS's definition, or the U.S. Treasury's definition? And he said, that's the definition of the credit union. But I had to beat it out of him to get it. Okay, he wouldn't just readily give up that information. I had to sit there and play verbal judo with him for about 2 to 3 minutes, and he was getting annoyed, and I was starting to get annoyed. So he said, okay, tell me the denominations that you want. So I said, okay. I told him, I said, I want this much in hundreds, this much in 50s, this much in 10s, this much in 20s, this much in 5s. And he said, okay, we can do that for you. You can pick up the money anytime after 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, which would have been Wednesday. And I said, okay, no problem. Thanks. And I hung up. Okay.
So it's a 3-day, or this is the third day.
This is the second day. Okay. This is the second day. So Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon at my lunch hour, I drive over to the main branch and I walk in and I see a teller that I know who floats around to the other branches. And I walk up and I said, hey, she had been at the other branch the first time where I made the original request. She says, yeah, I think we have some cash here for you to pick up today. I said, yeah, I do. And she said, well, because of the size of the transaction, I'm not allowed to handle that. The teller manager has to do that. I said, okay, no problem. And so I brought a bag in with me to take the money. And they come over to me and they say, hello, Mr. Mann. We have your money here. We have your cash here. And I said, great. And they said, are the denominations that you wanted the same? And I said, yeah, they are. They said, okay. Well, before we can give you the money, we just have to get one more piece of information from you. we need you to state your occupation. I said, I don't understand. What do you mean? We need you to state your occupation. And I said, well, I work for such and such a company. And they said, yes, we know, but we need you to state in what capacity. And I said, well, who's asking? And they said, well, it's part of some paperwork that we need to fill out for internal compliance. And I said, so the bank is asking? And she said, well, I'm not allowed to disclose that. And I said, so you're asking me for information. You're asking me for personal information, but you won't tell me who you're giving it to. And she said, yeah, that's correct. And I said, well, do you realize that when I came here 14 months ago and I opened an account with you guys, that was all part of the information that I needed to give to you to have the account approved and opened? She said, yeah. And he said, well, why don't you just go and look at that? Why do I need to give you? You already have that information. She's like, well, even though you did provide it, we don't save that information. I said, well, I'll tell you what. If you tell me who you're going to give that information to, then I will tell you exactly what my occupation is. She said, I can't do that. I said, well, then I can't help you. And she said, well, if you don't tell us that, then we may be able to refuse the request for the withdrawal. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I dare you to refuse the request for the withdrawal because I will not state my occupation. This money was deposited into my account electronically by my employer, who you know exactly who that is. So if anyone, including the IRS or the U.S. Treasury, has a question about where that money came from, they should know damn well where it came from because they took 42% taxes out of that money before I got it. So there's a paper trail to that money. And if you won't tell me who you're going to give my personal information to, I don't feel comfortable giving it to you. And she said, okay, well, so you're refusing to give the information? I said, absolutely. But I want the money. And if I walk out of here without it, you're going to be hearing from my attorney and you can explain it to him. And she said, okay, well, I will go and contact compliance and see if we can honor the request without you stating your occupation. So 20 minutes later, I finally get annoyed and I tell them, hey, listen, I'm on my lunch hour. I talked to the vice president of the bank yesterday. He told me to come down here anytime after 9 and get the money. He didn't say anything about this nonsense. And, you guys are this is ridiculous. I want my money. So they said, okay, we just talked to compliance, and they said that they would give you can have the money without stating your occupation.
You can have your money.
Yeah, exactly. And so she said, but when we count it out for you, we don't want to do it at the teller line. We don't want to do it in front of any other customers. I said, well, what's the big deal? And she said, it's for your safety. Again, it's for your safety. I said, okay, whatever. So they take the money and they take me into a private office where they have, the Tony Montana money counting machine, and they're counting the money out. And at that point, we're talking, and I'm just trying to be nice, and I noticed that the bills were not strapped, with the bands around them like they normally are. Most of the time, when you see a money band, it's about the width of your thumb, and they're marked in $1,000, $2,000 increments depending on how big the bills are. I noticed that they were a lot wider. The straps were like 3 or 4 fingers wide. So they count out the money, and basically I walk out and I leave. And when I get back to my office, I look at the money, and I then understood why they said we need to, quote unquote, order the money. And when I looked at the straps that were on the bills, they were from the Federal Reserve Bank. which, by the way, had its celebrating 100 years on there as well. So I thought that was kind of funny. So the truth of the matter, Rory, is after a 3 day ordeal and dealing with all that nonsense and aggravation to get $16,000 in cash, the truth of the matter is that when I looked at all the bills that they gave me, a little bit more than half of the $16,000 had come from the Federal Reserve. So they don't have it. That's the bottom line. They
They
don't
don't
have it.
have any cash.
They don't
And
have
the,
any
and
cash.
but for me, Mark, the real takeaway is that if you were to walk in there and say, I need to withdraw $2,800, you're going to be either A, met with a bunch of flack, or B, walk out of there empty handed, because they're not going to give it to you, because that is a quote large sum of cash, end quote. And that is not, if you think, folks, if you just think about your bills, your rent, your mortgage, your food bill, your the put gas in your car, your entertainment for the weekend, it's not a lot of cash to go in and make a request for. And they're telling you, nah, what's your occupation?
Right, right. Like that has anything to do
Like,
with
it's just another hurdle. It's just
right,
like we're going to give it one more shot to hold on to this cash, because
right.
oh my
One thing,
god,
when you talk about this stuff, it's like I didn't write it all down, and you remember things. But one thing that I do want to mention is that when I spoke to the the vice president of the bank the day before, okay, he said to me, "Well, if you want your money, we have no problems giving you a cashier's check for the entire amount to the penny." I said, "Well, how does that help me?" He said, "Well, we can give you your money. We'll just give you a check." And I said, "So you're not understanding. I want cash, and if you give me a check, I have to take that to another institution and deposit it and wait for it to clear, or take it to a check cashing place and have them and pay them a vig to give me the cash, which means I'm going to get less." Okay, and I'm
right?
sure for that amount, it's not so easy. You just can't walk into a checking cashing place, and I'm sure they have their limits and stuff too. So the point was, they even did that to me when I said, "Hey, I'm not going to give you my occupation." They said, "Well, then we can just give you a cashier's check for the whole thing." Okay, and again, the point is that they're doing everything they can not to give you cash. They're doing everything they can to discourage you from not giving you cash. Now, there are people that listen to this that will probably say, "Well, what did you expect?" And this and that. I've talked to Gerald Salenti about this in person, not my particular situation, when he went through his situation, and he was asking for significantly more a few years ago when this happened. Anybody that I've talked to that's been in this situation before, that I've heard go through this, they've asked for 30, 40, 50,000. They're in the process of retirement, or they're moving money around, or they're trying to buy a vehicle with cash. $16,000 is not a lot of money, and the original request to these idiots was only 11,000. I
Right.
I made it 16 because I knew. I said, "Hey, look, I was going to keep $4,000 or $5,000 in my savings account, and once I realized, hey, they don't have it, and if I'm going to have to get my stones crushed over anything over 2,500 bucks, it's not worth it. I'd rather take whatever risks that I have for keeping it myself." Okay, but that is the point. Okay, and when you and I talked about this, Rory, over the past couple days, we talked about the fact that a lot of people, including myself, especially those who are awake and aware, I've always said, "Hey, if something like this happens, I'll see the writing on the wall. If there's going to be a financial meltdown, we're not going to wake up and it's going to happen overnight." To some people that don't know, it will happen that way. But for
Right.
the people who are astute, okay, and know what's going on out there, people say, "Well, you'll probably have a period of a week or so, and you'll be able to do this or that." Well, if you know that it's coming and it's imminent, and they're telling you it could take up to a week to get you a small amount of money like that, then you're not going to get it. You don't think that you're going to outsmart the system, because you know hey, what a better way to prevent a bank run than to not have any cash at all? How can you have a run on the bank if they have no cash at all,
There
right?
you have it.
it'd be a digital run on the bank, but if you still want to get your money, eventually you're going to have to suck it out of somewhere. And
Well, but the digital, they can put limits on that, just like
right,
what they did. I mean, they've already stated that. I mean, and I love using this example. It's Jeremy Stein, the address that he delivered to the IMF after Cyprus, after they stole all the Cyprians' money. They just go in and put limits. Well, you can only get $50 today. You can only
right,
get
right,
$100 today, and you can only get in total for the next week $300. That's
right.
it. That's all you get.
And again, every time you hear these things, it's always for your protection, which I think is a big joke.
What
One of
what
the things that I really wanted to do here, and we can talk about how stupid these people all day, and how stupid these people are all day, but I think really what this is the war on cash that everybody's talking about. Okay, and one of the things that I felt was they didn't want people to see this cash. It was almost like when I was in there asking for the money, they took me into this private office to count it there, and it had the air of like a shady transaction. They were treating it like it was a shady transaction, where like cash is a dirty word, okay? And
Yep.
God forbid they see Mr. Mann pulling this cash out, because if people see him doing it, maybe they might want their cash too, right? So monkey see, monkey do, right?
It's like
So
a virus.
right, exactly. And if they can't, if they don't have it, then why would they want to do that, right? So um, I think that the thing that we really need to focus on for the rest of this conversation is some things that I've really given a lot of thought to, that you and I have talked about over the years. And I think what's important is that you minimize your risk here.
Yep.
And, what are the things that you can do so you don't have to be in this situation? If you want cash, you are going to be in this situation. My problem, Rory, was that, I never had situations where I was always paid monthly. I was never in a situation where I was getting a big yearly bonus over the last 10 years of my career. So whenever I pulled out cash, I was always doing it, $1,500 at a time out of a biweekly paycheck. So I was under the radar. This is the first time I had to do it. And of course, there's going to be people that say, well, if you didn't want to deal with that, why didn't you just go and find out the number? And, if you wanted 16,000 in cash, why don't you just take 2 or 3,000 at a time and 4 or 5 trips? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. My time is worth something. I travel, and I don't have a week, 10 days, 2 weeks to suck all that money out, especially once I know there's a problem. And the
Right.
other issue with that is that, that can erase suspicion in itself. And
Exactly.
there's something that's called structuring deposits. That's what people need to be aware of. If you are depositing money to stay below the $10,000 IRS thresholds of suspicious deposits or withdrawals, and they know, the teller at the bank or the branch manager knows that you are doing that intentionally, they can fill out a suspicious withdrawal notification just based on that. It's a legal term in when you look at banking law and stuff like that. Look up the term structured deposits or structured withdrawals. That is suspicion in itself. So the way I looked at it was, hey, I want all my money, and if they have to fill out something, go ahead. I don't have anything to hide. That was auto deposited into my account by my employer. I'm a W-2 employee. I don't have any suspicion here. So if somebody wants to go look at that, go ahead. Versus taking a week to 10 days to go out and suck this money out over a period of 4 or 5 withdrawals. I'm not doing that. So the bottom line is, what can you do? And I think the main thing that a lot of people need to think about is becoming your own bank. Have cash on hand. And, the truth of the matter, Rory, is that there's really not a lot of advantages to dealing with banks or credit unions or places like that anymore, because they don't pay interest anymore.
At
So what
all.
is the right? And in some places in Europe, they're paying negative interest rates. And who knows,
Exactly.
that may happen here someday. It might. Okay. But the point is that you're always told that the reason why you keep your money in a bank is so you can earn interest and have security. Well, they're not paying any interest anymore. They have no liquidity to give you your money anymore. And when you try and get your money, they create all kinds of red flags for you. And who knows who they're notifying and what they're doing as a
Treat
result of
and,
it. You
and they
know,
treat you like a criminal.
right. They treat you like a criminal and they treat you like a jerk for trying to get what
Your
rightfully
money.
belongs to you. Okay. So the only thing that you have is, if you're going to keep money at home or in another location, you really only have two risks: theft or fire. And everybody's situation in regards to that is different. I'm not going to tell people, what the risk model is for something I don't even know. Okay. But the other thing I think you need think about is, if you are going to be in a situation where you have to get cash or you want to get your cash, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be in trouble if you don't get it as quick as you need it. And if you have money and you're not sure whether you want to take it out of the bank or not, know your bank's policy and what their rules are before you need the money. Call ahead. If you think you have money or you want to get money or you want to know what it would take, be clear about it. Don't just call and listen to some idiot that's a teller there. Talk to a branch manager. Talk to somebody of authority. Hang up the phone with that person once you get an answer and call a different branch and ask the same question. See if you get the same answer. Okay? Don't think that you can outsmart the system and pull cash out because you think you're going to be ahead of the curve. That's not the way it's going to work. If you're lucky, it may happen that way, but you're probably not going to be able to make it happen if you don't know what the rules are and what their policies are. Okay.
Yep.
The other thing, before you get the money, think of where and how you're going to store it or hide it before you go and get it. And only make sure only as few people know about it as possible. Obviously, operational security. Loose lips sink ships. And if you're a person that doesn't have a fire rated gun safe or something like that, be creative. There's a lot of things that you can do.
A lot of
A lot
ways.
of
A
times,
lot of ways.
things are best hidden in plain sight. And if you're gonna hide cash in your house or on your property or whatever, put it in more than one location. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's out there. Like there's little containers that are like a can of Barbasol shaving cream, where you could roll up a wad of $50 or $100 bills and keep several $1,000s in there. You can pop one of the baseboards in your house and hide it in there. You can pop a floorboard or do something in your attic. Obviously, that doesn't take care of a fire, but I'm sure the odds of some of these things are really low when you
Minimal.
realistically look at them. Okay.
Yes. Look
You
at
know,
the numbers. Follow. Look
right,
at the numbers. They'll tell you exactly.
right,
I mean, and
okay,
none of this is to be construed as financial advice or
right.
any of that, because neither Mark nor myself are financial advisors. These are just suggestions, just ideas.
And one of the things that I really think people should do too is, if they know they're going to go in there and make a large cash withdrawal, have a story. Make up a BS story. It's like, well, I'm buying my a car for my one of my kids. It's their first car, or hey, I'm buying a snowmobile, or I'm buying my fiance an engagement ring. Come up with some type of story about, just it's disarming. It doesn't make you look as suspicious. Have some kind of BS cover story. People think, hey, I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to lie. But at the same point in time, you shouldn't have to be treated like a criminal either for getting your own money. So I think it's a little disarming to them, and it puts them a little bit at ease. And if they are filling out some paperwork and doing some reporting that you don't know about, it'd probably be a good idea to have some BS story about why you need the money. And then, think about this: cash, currency, is a medium of exchange. You use it to get what you need. And the more that you have what you need in terms of hard goods, the less cash you need to operate a household. So if you're somebody that is financially strapped and you sit there and you say, hey, this week I have the choice of saving $10 in cash or maybe buying a bulk pack of toilet paper for $9.99 that's on sale that you're saving $2 or $3 on. You use toilet paper every day, and you can only wipe your butt with the $10 bill once. Okay. So if you're really and I'm saying this because there's a lot of people out there right now, Roy, that they don't have cash to save. They're
Right.
living paycheck to paycheck, and everybody can scrimp and save. I mean, I don't care, how broke you are. You can always save something. There's always something you can go without. If you brown bag your lunch or give up that Starbucks coffee every day. Most people can, even people that are really cash strapped, can save $10 to $15 a week or something like that.
Yeah,
But my point
exactly.
is that
Be
you have to look at
creative.
what. Yeah, exactly. Be creative, and you have to look at the buying power of that cash. Cash is a medium of exchange. So if there's stuff that you need, you know, to you need toilet paper every day. You need food every day. So you have to think about that. If you have limited cash and you have limited ability to save, maybe you should be looking at hard assets instead. So the other thing is that people that do have cash, I think, and this is something that I can tell you from personal experience, from having been through 8 hurricanes in my life and September 11th and the blackout of 2002 in New York City. When you're in an environment where cash is very scarce, you should definitely have small bills, spendable bills, because
Yes.
a lot of these people don't have ways of making change. So if you're going in somewhere and you're trying to buy a 6 pack of water with $100 bill, I'm not saying you may be spending a lot more than you have to if you can't make change. So
That's right.
have some fives, tens, and singles. Don't just have big bills.
Yeah,
I think
20
that's
should be, yeah. I'm all over that idea. That is a wise way of storing cash at home.
yeah. If you have to literally take the money and run, or you're going to be traveling, it's hard. I had hundreds, fifties, tens, and twenties, and I had never gotten that much cash out at one time, and it was a pretty big pile. It didn't all fit in a zipper bank bag. I mean, I had to, stick some of it in my pocket, but it's bulky, and but if you're going to use it for the types of situations that we're talking about, you need to have small bills. And the last thing I want to say about it, Rory, is hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't be 100% in all cash or 100% in all metals or 100% in hard assets. Diversify your risk in terms of your own personal portfolio. Have a good blend, and that's different for everybody. But all the precious metals guys out there that say, oh well, I don't really have any cash, or oh, I buy food and ammo and this and that. Cash, I do believe there will be a window if we do have another financial implosion or some type of bank holiday, or fill in the blank, whatever you want to call it. I've always said over the last few years that I really do believe that there will be a window where cash is king. That may be a couple of days, it may be a couple of weeks, it may be longer, but the truth of the matter is that physical cash, hard cash, is very scarce. And if a credit union with tens of millions of dollars on deposit has to order it from a local Federal Reserve branch, it just tells me that most of the money in the system today is ones and zeros on a computer server somewhere. There's
That is
really not
right.
that much physical cash out there.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, heed the warning is all I can say. I mean, it's I have written about this. I've interviewed other people about being your own central bank. I mean, you have to take charge of your life. I mean, it's just that simple. It's part of being prepared. It's part of, in my opinion, it's part of being a good steward to your life. I mean, how can you take care of yourself and your family if you can't provide for them, and if you're not looking at every single situation that possible to be able to address in case something goes wrong. Not in case something goes wrong, when something goes
Right.
wrong, period.
And
I mean, it's
that
going to happen.
likelihood, right? That likelihood gets more certain by the day.
Well, I
And
mean, and it doesn't have to be some, gigantic catastrophe. I mean, it could be something that's very localized. It could be even something that applies only to your family. I
right,
mean,
and
period. And
exactly.
having those situations, having a means to be able to continue functioning alleviates a lot of stress. I mean, that's my big thing is that I mean a broken leg or a broken bone or an auto accident or any number of 101 things that we experience every day that goes wrong can create a situation to where things don't look the same that they as they did yesterday. So your situation, my situation can change in in a nanosecond, and I'm try to be aware of that. And the only way that I can address those is by addressing them before they happen instead of during or after they happen.
Well, the problem, Rory, is a lot of people really do believe that their money is in a bank for safekeeping, and if they don't have it and they're not paying you interest on the money they don't have, what are they doing for you? And there will still be people that listen to this that say, "Oh, well, that's BS," and I know that I'm not going to have a problem at my bank, and I say, "Okay, that's fine," but you still, if you have a significant amount of money in the bank, you should still know what the procedure and what the path to your money is. And
Yeah.
if you don't, you're a fool. And a
Well,
fool and his money are soon parted.
and here's a challenge. I mean, if you have the ways and means of doing it, go into your local bank where you have your account, people that you conduct business with on a regular basis. If that even happens, because of online bill pay and electronic transfers and blah blah blah, people don't have near as much interaction with banking people as they used to. So my challenge is, if you have the ways and means, go into your local bank and withdraw a significant, a quote, large sum of cash, somewhere around 2,500 to $3,000, and see what happens. Just walk in and see if you can do that. If you have the means to do it, if you can make a request for a larger amount, then try that experiment. I'm not saying that you have to keep it. I'm just saying try it as an experiment and see what happens.
Yep.
So,
Well, with that, Rory, I appreciate you having me on. I thought it was important to tell the story about what happened. And, again, I think the important thing to note is it wasn't for 50 or 60,000. It was for originally 11,000. And then I changed it to 16,000. And people need to know. And
yep.
I think you're doing a great job. And it's been great to see all the guests you've had on, and you're doing really well out there. And I think it's awesome. So thanks for having me on, and I appreciate everybody's best wishes. It's good to be on with you again after all this time.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Mark. And we'll get you back on and talk about training and firearm safety in the not too distant future.
Okay, buddy. Good talking to you.
Same here.